Good morning. How are you guys? This is Rudy Lozano with PRG Platinum. Thank you for joining us via Zoom as well as here live. We're recording these training sessions for the simple fact that you can refer to them on either our website at PRG Platinum.net, or you can go to our YouTube channel, Premier Realty Group Platinum. So a lot of changes. They just updated some forms on August 24th. But I want you guys to understand that the compensation is what the realtors are talking about, but the brokers, the managers, Sabor, NAR, CAR, they're not too concerned about the compensation right now. Because what ends up happening is that we're needing to focus on being in compliance with this lawsuit where there's full transparency on the compensation, who negotiates it, who pays it, who's responsible, those kinds of things. Full transparency. Um, so we have brokers out there that aren't wanting to disclose the compensation. They want to see your offer first, but it all changes because then if you're doing a buyer's orientation with your buyer, they're telling you they only have their down payment and their closing costs. And at your buyer's orientation, you ask them, would Mr. Buyer, from what I'm hearing, uh, you know, do you want me to expose you to properties where you are going to be responsible for the compensation? Those are questions that you have to ask before you start your journey, like an attorney does, whether they can win the case. Because I mean, like I said, you're asking questions because I mean, if they're unrealistic, they don't have any money, they don't have any credit, they don't, once again, the criteria doesn't meet your needs as far as the location that you service. Well, if they don't have any money and they can't pay you, you're not going to be able to take on every client. Okay. So I want to start off with the form that if you have an exclusive right to list, you are the listing agent, or you took on a client prior to June 24th. If you've been working with somebody prior to June 23rd, whether it's a seller or a buyer, you will have to bring in your old agreements that are out of compliance into compliance. June 24th is the day of the transparency. Form PXR 1505, uh, PXR Form 2701 is for any buyer's representation agreement or any exclusive right to list that you might have written up, and the date is very specific, June 23rd. If your listing has been sitting prior to June 23rd, or you have been working with a buyer prior to June 23rd, you must bring your buyer's representation agreement and your exclusive right to list into compliance. And if you read this form, you'll understand why it's needed, because it talks about in line item A, first and foremost, let's use the date of on this form that Clint should be scanning to you here shortly. You're saying that your buyer's representation agreement or your exclusive right to list was written prior to June 23rd. Let's say it was January 1st, April, May, June 23rd. Past June 24th, the new forms have been updated as far as the transparency of the compensation and who's going to pay for what. Okay. Because we definitely want to avoid the lawsuits into the future. So I want to cover the three main points of why Form 2701, because I know that some of you guys have listings that have been sitting, and I know that some of you guys have been working with buyers that might already be under contract with the builder. You're waiting for that house to be completed. If your package is dated before June 23rd on the listing side or the buying side, you must use Form PXR 2701. Line item A, I mean, it talks, you're taking that agreement from that day to and anytime after June 24th. Okay. A talks about for all representation agreements, which includes your two agreements. Okay. Broker compensation or the sharing of compensation between brokers is not set by law nor fixed, controlled, recommended, or suggested by the Association of Realtors, MLS, or any listing service. Broker compensation is fully negotiable. Brokers independently determine their fees. That is a full transparency thing. That was the point of the lawsuit. The second option talks about the property. If you're already under contract, you have to mention the property or the property you already have listed, whether it's you're already under contract with the builder, because you went under contract with the builder in May or before June 23rd, right? Or you already have it listed. So then the next paragraph under B talks about paragraph 8A includes payment of compensation to the other broker working with a buyer or tenant. Client authorizes broker to compensate the other broker as indicated in paragraph 8A. Because remember, before June 24th, you would go and say, hey, our company takes on the listing at 6%. And they didn't talk about the option of whether they wanted to pay or not. This brings in that compliance piece is that now you have the option. And of course, when you're re-executing those listing agreements and telling them to sign this form, is that, hey, your house has already been sitting and we're offering compensation. You have the option of not to pay, but then that might take us into next year. If you do not pay a buyer's agent, they will not bring their qualified buyer. It boils down to that. So once again, but you have to disclose the transparency piece that you have the option of not paying. Paragraph 8B is deleted. It just brings it into compliance. It's with or without compensation. And then, of course, line item C for buyer and tenant representation agreements. Broker is prohibited from receiving compensation for brokerage services from any source that exceeds the amounts stated in the representation agreement. For those of you that charge more than 3%, for those of you that charge a retainer fee, for those of you that charge a transaction fee, I'm going to read that again. Broker is prohibited from receiving compensation for brokerage services of, of whether the other broker is a participant in MLS in which the listing is filed. Oh, I'm sorry. Broker is prohibited from receiving compensation for brokerage services from any source that exceeds the amount stated in the representation agreement. In other words, if your buyer's representation says 3 and you charge 4, or you charge 4 plus a $500 transaction fee, that's the reason that your package guys, we're not doing this. We're not going to stress out. Your package, the moment that you take on a client, you need to upload it. As well as when you take on a listing, you need to upload it and then disclose the compensation on our website so that way the fee connects to MLS. But if you take on a client today with a short form at 3% and you end up taking them to the builder and they're going to pay you 7, if you do not update your buyer's rep agreement, you cannot collect anything more than 3%. So for those of you that collect a retainer fee, collect 4%, charge 5%, or charge a transaction fee. If it's not in the buyer's rep agreement, your CDA will not go off if you are not in compliance. Because what's going to happen, guys, we're going to start seeing a lot of lawsuits. But guess what TREC's going to do? For those of you that have been involved in ethics complaints, not ethics complaints, but complaints at TREC, folks can actually file an ethics complaint at FAR, which you go under committee, and that's a real pain. It's not nice because you have 20 different brokers on a Zoom call asking you questions and judging you and questioning your every move. But TREC wants to see your paperwork. They want to do the forensics on your file. So they're going to start looking at the paper trail. When you met them, when you disclose, what date the buyer's representation agreement states, and what you agreed at the beginning and what happened at the end. And you need to have your amendments in place because then you decided to charge a little bit more than what was being offered by the seller or the listing broker. Or if you took him to the new home, if your compensation says three and the builder's paying seven, you cannot collect a cent over 3%. And that includes transaction fees. So if you'll get the door, so what ends up happening is that it's absolutely crucial that you are in compliance because two things will happen. If somebody files a complaint and they go back and go, hey, I didn't agree to pay this other fee, or this is the percentage and they charged it to me, and they file a complaint, first TREC's going to make you take additional classes. And then the second thing is that they're going to make you reimburse the client for all of the compensation. So they won't just penalize you for the $500 extra that you collected or the 1 point. Usually one of the sanctions is that you forfeit your entire compensation. You have to give the buyer or the seller that money back. And if you don't give it back, it has to come out of the recovery fund if in the event that you don't have that money. And if you don't have that money, your license goes into inactive immediately because you cannot owe money to the real estate commission if any money has to be dispersed from the recovery fund. Okay. So once again, the brokers, the managers, the compliance managers, TREC, CAR, NAR, we're more concerned about the compliance piece because then you might actually get complaint at TREC or at TAR, but then they might actually go and jump on some bandwagon with some other attorney that's trying to gather other people that they feel they've been wronged. And then all of a sudden, that $20,000 compensation that you got, not only do you have to reimburse it, but then you've just added us in another lawsuit because then they're going to see you collecting monies that the buyer didn't agree or the seller didn't agree. They're going to see it as deceptive trade practices. And guess what, guys? Deceptive trade practices is something that they bring in the Department of Justice in at the federal level. Because this isn't Texas, guys. This is federal. A federal court found that realtors didn't have full transparency and that we were involved in deceptive trade practices. So you cannot continue how you were doing business before because it's not only going to get you, our brokerage, our trade association locally, and TAR to write additional checks into the future. So we need to ensure that we're in compliance and we put corrective measures in place. So once again, if you guys think that you guys are stressed out, I have to deal with 200 of you guys, and so does Clint. And then, we're not doing this thing where you're turning in your compliance packages at the end. We need to see them up front. Because if your paperwork is not in compliance, you might end up reimbursing your compensation anyways. There might be an error or omission claim that needs to be processed on your behalf. Guess who gets to pay that error and omission money? $2,500 deductible. When you pay your transaction fee, that's kind of like paying like for your auto insurance, guys. You pay your monthly fee, right? But if you're in a wreck, there's still a deductible that you have to pay. And for you guys, it's 2,500 bucks because I'm not paying for it. Okay. So take care of your driving record and certainly take care of your license record with TREC. Okay. So once again, to recap, Form TXR 2701 brings into compliance any listing agreement and buyer's rep agreement that was executed prior to June 24th. Okay. Even though you might be under contract and it's getting ready to close, but because the seller or the buyer signed before June 24th, you have to have this form in place. Okay. So I'm going to move on. Um, the next one that I wanted to talk to you guys about is And we're going to talk about the short form and we're going to talk about the long form and then some other applicable forms. Um, the compensation agreement between brokers. Okay. It is the duty of the buyer's agent to validate or verify the compensation being paid. And it is the fiduciary duty and responsibility of the buyer's agent to ensure compliance to the compensation piece and the disclosure thereof. Okay. Because remember, you guys are visiting with the buyer's agents, the buyers. You're doing a buyer's orientation. So if a listing agent, and I'm not understanding that, guys, because they're the exclusive right to list states that, hey, Mr. Seller, we're going to take on the listing for 6%. We're going to share it. Okay. And then they're filling out a little blank that says we're going to pay 3 or we're going to pay 2, even though we're charging you 6. I'm not understanding why other brokers and other agents are trying to go, well, I'll let you know what the compensation is when you submit an offer. Didn't we just talk about full transparency? Are you freaking kidding me? Seriously, by you not disclosing the compensation that you've already discussed with your seller, that I'm going to charge you 6 or I'm going to charge you 8 and I'm going to share this percentage. It is your fiduciary duty and responsibility for the listing agent and their brokerage. You cannot put it on MLS. Nothing having to do with MLS can be disclosed about the compensation. But if you took on an exclusive right to list, there will be ethics violations. You're violating your fiduciary duties because you can't be greedy and say, oh, well, we're going to disclose the compensation. It depends on your offer. No, it doesn't. You're already telling the seller that, hey, I want to pay an agent. I need my household. I'm doing 6 so that when you pay the buyer's agent 3, you can't go, okay, we're going to see the offer. Well, if you're going to play that game, my recommendation is make the appointment. And then when they want remarks and feedback, unable to verify compensation in compliance to NAR requirements. That way, that email goes to the seller. What do you mean? Why do they not know what the compensation? I've already signed my exclusive right to list with you, and my paperwork says you're going to keep 3 and they're going to keep 3. So this agent didn't walk through the door because your broker doesn't know what they're doing, or you don't know what you're doing, or are you trying to keep on 6%? I'm trying to sell my home. I'm going to take a job offer in New York. Ethics violations, not upholding fiduciary duties, deceptive trade practices. I mean, I want to jump on these chats and talk to these people about that. But I don't know if it's just the lack of comprehension or they're not in tune with what's going on in the marketplace or they're not wanting to protect their license. They're looking at the short term rather than the long term. It's going to take a good 6 months, year or 2 years to shake off all these people that are lawsuit humping, that are going to go after your compensation even after you earn it. But if a seller has to go, man, they terminated me because you didn't sell my house, you wouldn't disclose the compensation. I was going to make $50,000 more a year, and because you didn't disclose the compensation, I'm going to sue you now, Mister Listing Agent, because of your greed, and because you chose not to market the compensation. Now I'm out of a promotion. I'm out all of this money. I've already bought a house somewhere else. I have to reimburse the relocation allowance, and then I can't handle 2 mortgages. Now I have to pay 2 mortgages. Look at what you've done to me. So once again, these agents not disclosing compensation, guys, that's going to get them in trouble. The exclusive right to list doesn't, it's not the intended purpose of the agent to confiscate all of the compensation and get you or encourage you to get your compensation from the buyer. It's deceptive trade practices. They're going to get themselves into a lot of trouble. Okay. So once again, full disclosure. So for those of you guys that are listing agents and have listings, make sure that you update your profile. Say more on Broker IDX. You go into Broker IDX, upload your listing package, and then disclose the compensation. Brokers not disclosing compensation are in violation of this lawsuit. It will get them into a lot of trouble because the moment you're having to write checks and your E&O can only handle so many claims, and the brokerage has taken on the philosophy that because of greed, thinking that they're going to collect more money and not have to disclose full compensation could impact the seller negatively. Okay, so it, but at the same time, guys, it's the buyer's agent responsibility to verify compensation. Don't give away your cards. Hey, Mr. Buyer, Mr. Listing Agent, I'm actually going to show your home um, through the weekend. I've made an appointment, but I'm needing to verify the compensation. Okay, because my buyer doesn't have the money. My client has instructed me to circumvent any properties or do not expose them or not market any properties to them where they could be responsible for the compensation. I'm needing to uphold my fiduciary duties to my buyer because that would create a hardship for them. So what ends up happening is that if you don't verify the compensation on your website, by text, by email, and then by the time that you submit your offer and let them know that hey, I might submit an offer Monday, Tuesday, but I'm needing this compensation between brokers executed to coincide with what you have on your website. And if you don't, I wouldn't submit the offer until you get it signed. Okay. Going back to disclosure, I'm going to cover the short form now. Okay. The there's people that are making it complicated and there's some people that are making it very easy. Guys, don't get caught up in the little things. When you meet somebody prior to you showing them houses, you just need to let them know that they have to sign your information by broker services, and at that moment, you might even want to get them to sign the general information and notice to a buyer and seller. It covers things from annexation, appraisal, brokers' compensation, environmental concerns. It covers expansive soils, the FRICTA, flood hazards, floodways and flood insurance, historic or conservative conservation districts, inspections, repairs, and walkthroughs, mandatory homeowners association, mineral rights, multiple listing services, permits, possession, property insurance, property values, residential service contracts, restrictions on property near an international border, school boundaries, septic tanks, sex offenders and criminal activity, square footage, statutory tax districts, surveillance, surveys, synthetic stucco, taxpirations, termination option, tidewaters, title insurance, utilities, water level fluctuations, water wells, wire fraud. Guys, it's been on our checklist before this happened. It is Form TXR 1506. There's one Form A and Form B. Form A is for the seller, Form B is for the buyer. This is all the stuff that we as realtors have to be conscious about because it takes an army to close on any transaction. So this is just general information I'm covering with you, Mr. Buyer or Mr. Seller. So at that moment, hey, I'm going to cover all of this real quick. That way, because for me, I really like to work with well-informed buyers because it's going to make the journey even more pleasant. And once again, I know you probably have heard about this lawsuit, in the news and everything. And I just need you to sign this one-page form for me. I'm going to cover it with you very quickly. But just know that at the end of the day, right now we have a buyer's market. I have builders calling me every day, texting me all of their inventory with major price reductions, with incentives, with bonuses for you and appliances and all sorts of things. The reason you need a realtor is because you cannot negotiate a deal better than I can. And I'm going to take you on as a client. And these are little things that I'm going to cover with you because you're not a prospect. You're not just a consumer. You're my client. Okay. And just know this is that I really need you to sign this form because then that allows me to go to work for you. because I'm all about making your dream happen. And if your family's goal is to get into a home before school starts, I'm all about that. But these few forms that I need you to sign, uh, allow me to go to work for you. Okay. So once again, it starts. I mean, obviously, you're in this case on a true day. Premier Realty Group Platinum's our company. Once again, I'm going to make um, uh, I'm going to be your agent, so I'm being appointed to this agreement. Okay, I'm going to be your agent. Okay, uh, what ends up happening is I service the San Antonio and the surrounding area and the surrounding counties. Okay, the term starts today, and hey, we're going to start with the short form, and then we'll transition to a more detailed form once we find a property for you. Okay, so hey, this agreement's only from today through next Sunday. Okay, do it for 5 days, do it for 10 days, but give at least yourself 2 weekends to be able to service these people to determine if they're following instructions. I mean, obviously, you want to get them pre-qualified to make sure that you're in the right price point. I mean, because if they're telling you they want, less than $100,000, you need to make a business decision to decide to work with them or not. All right. Or if they want a property in Houston, you might not service the Houston area. Okay. So once again, you need to filter them always. Do it for a couple of weeks, just so that way you can determine if you're a good fit. Okay, I'm not obligating you to a 3 month or 6 months contract. You know, I'm going to show you what I can do. I've been doing this for a while. I'm a master negotiator, and I know the San Antonio market. Um, and then I provide full services. I'm affiliated with PRG Plan, and we're a full service real estate firm. We do residential, commercial, farm and ranch, development, and everything else. Furthermore, we have an in house mortgage company, insurance company, closing agent service. We have over 200 agents in our office. Incidentally, there's a closing taking place right now, guys, on the other side of our office, which is our conference room. Those are the things that we do. Okay. So sell full services. Do not elect a showing service fee. You're better off collecting a percentage from beginning to end than putting a price on your time for showing three houses. Because then you're going to confuse your client. Because if you charge $150 to show them three homes, and then all of a sudden you end up only showing them six and writing them up, and then all of a sudden you're getting paid 3% or 7%, it's going to be very difficult for you to overcome that. Um, Broker's compensation, at least do 3% or 4%. But tell them that you're going to collect it from four buckets: the seller, the builder, sales concessions, and then any difference will be covered by the buyer. Don't give them any indication that they're going to pay you your full compensation, because right now we're in a buyer's market. I don't know about next year, but right now, if sellers aren't paying a compensation, their house isn't being shown. It boils down to that. And then, of course, intermediary. Okay. So they walked into your open house. You need them. And of course, we have over 200 listings. And then, of course, uh, you want to give them tell them that they will be exposed to our company inventory before anybody else does. So if they're looking for a certain property in a certain zip code or school district or anything, they might be the first ones to know, because many of our agents do put it on that coming soon, in a certain school district, or even the details on the house, and you might see that on our private Facebook page. So that way you can already peg that property, already walk it, have it ready. Um, the moment that it's about to go live. Okay, so take it from the short form into the long form, and like I said, even an intermediary, you will let them know that you're going to represent them. Okay, and there is a form for that. It's the representation agreement that you're representing them and only them. If it's our listing, obviously there's a chance for intermediary. But when you go and start your journey, you're letting them know that you're not treating them as a prospect or a consumer. You conduct business. You're required to conduct business on a client level. Sub agency doesn't exist anymore. unless it's your listing and somebody shows up and says, I'm an investor, I don't need a realtor, or I'm the neighbor and I don't need a realtor. I'm going to offer you this, 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 this. Nowhere in the equation are they asking you for your advice and opinion. You're going to check off that you represent only the seller and then just be professional. You can disclose square footage, school district, those kinds of things, but you're not allowed to give advice and opinion because you're going to cross the line. If an investor or somebody in the community is telling you what they want to do, you follow their lead. Okay. And then that's the only time that you'll see some agency there. Okay. Um, so keep it simple. Don't make it too complicated. And then, of course, if you end up transitioning into the long form, at that moment, you have already identified a property. So what you want to do is um, get the agreement to match whatever compensation the seller or the builder is offering. If you know you're going to go right up with the builder, because most of the realtors in this office have experience. If you don't know that that house offers 5% compensation plus another $5,000 bonus, and you're on the way to the community and you haven't done your paperwork, that's shame on you. At that moment, you can't do the paperwork after you write up the contract. That needs to be done before you head on to the community. Because, guys, if somebody files a complaint against you or they feel that you got too much compensation, we have to document through DocuSign, and we might even be asked to provide your DocuSign certificate, where and it better reflect their email. It better not reflect the realtor's email or the broker's email. Whoever was on the contract must be on your buyer's representation agreement. And the last thing you want is for TREC to go, give me your DocuSign certificate. And all of a sudden, you as the agent have been talking to the girlfriend or you yourself decided to just sign documents for to yourself, because trust me, TREC's going to come down on you. So don't do it. Don't do it. Because they will once they start doing the forensics on everything at PAR and at TREC or at a Sable Ethics Committee. Trust me, guys, that you will have a broker or somebody on the committee with experience to go, okay, the paperwork looks in compliance. I or the seller don't have a copy of it. Can we get your DocuSign certificates to find out who signed on their behalf? Don't do it. Don't do it. Make sure that you're in compliance, guys, beginning to end. Um, so now I'm going to cover the residential buyer tenant representation long form. And of course, this is going to take you from the short form, a week or 2 weeks or 30 days, into maybe the end of the year. Okay. And at that moment, you might have already identified the property. So if the seller's paying you 4 or you're charging 3 plus another point, this is the perfect opportunity for you to go, hey, you originally signed an agreement, but hey, we've been at it already 60 days. I've shown you 50 homes. Seller's only offering 3, but I'm going to charge you 1. Our new compensation agreement shows 4, and then it goes through the end of the year because your house will be completed, in 60 days. Always do a protection period of at least 60 days. Of course, Bear County. Uh, of course, you are always going to check off intermediary. Um, and I wanted to double back to the compensation. So what ends up happening is that on new construction, there's some new forms that are out, guys, that they don't want you to put up to 7% or up to 8%. But under 7E, I have gone ahead and put up to 8% as builder incentives vary and up to max HUD allowable, no charge to the buyer. Okay. As well as on other compensation, I went ahead and put language on here that you might want to just do a template for it. Max HUD allowable compensation. Because then what I recommend that you're going to have to do to make sure, because now they don't want you to have up to anything. And that's what I was advocating. You want to disclose that HUD, Housing and Urban Development, on a TRID loan, FHA, VA, USDA, and conventional, allow up to 8% max compensation. So you want to set the stage that 8% is law, okay, before you tell them, okay, well, you agreed to pay 3%, because then on the next form, amendment to buyer tenant representation agreement, that's TXR 1505. So you've on the long form, you start your journey, you get them to like you definitely confirm the fact that it's somebody that you want to work with, and they're now pre-qualified, they know of your knowledge and the services that you provide, those kinds of things. You have found them property, whether it's in the existing market or the new home market, you're disclosing what the max allowable is. So go ahead and just write an amendment at that moment. Hey, our original agreement said that 3% compensation was what I was going to try to get from the builder, the seller, in concessions, and or the difference you would make up. It just so happens that this is new construction. It's a $500,000 home. So I had originally told you three, which is what the amendment states, but then the builder's paying 7% compensation. So what you want to do is on the amendment is put the original compensation on D, and then on E, they changed it. In addition to broker's fee listed in paragraph 7A, you negotiated 304, right? Broker will be paid a bonus from the seller, landlord, or their agent in the amount equal to $20,000 if client purchases or leases the following property. You've already identified the property. You know that the builder is going to pay you seven. So you started with three. So you have to break it out. You originally agreed to three. But what the builder's paying is seven, which on a $500,000 home, 3% is 15,000. The total compensation is going to be $35,000. 3% is 15, and then the bonus happens to be 20. Okay, so don't confuse them. And then get them to sign the amendment. And if you just want to docu-sign it over to them and just say, hey, um, there's some based on the fact that now we found your property and we've been looking for 3 months and 6 months. Um, once again, I've already negotiated your sales price. The builder lowered the price 30,000. I've already negotiated a 1.9, 2.9, 3.9, 4.9. They're paying all of your closing costs. You're walking in with almost nothing. But hey, because I did such a wonderful job for you, the builder has decided to pay me a bonus. You know, because I bought a cash buyer or a highly qualified candidate to their community. So it's not something that comes out of your pocket. It's something that they want to reward me with. So hey, I'm going to update my long form, and then I have an amendment to the broker agreement confirming that. Okay. So I'm going to docu-sign it over. I just wanted to let you know that there were some changes, but it doesn't impact you at all. Are you good? Are we good? Are you happy with your new home? Are you happy with that 1.9, 2.9, 3.9? Find out what that push button is, guys. Oh, I'm not getting in with nothing. I'm getting in with nothing. I'm even getting my earnest money back because it was in a USDA area. Or, hey, I'm loving the interest rate. Okay. You're going to have to become better at pointing out the positive, guys. And also let your people know that you're a master negotiator. Okay. So, um, the last one that I wanted to cover, actually, guys, is the broker's fees on regarding broker's fees. So what it is that there is an agreement between the brokers as far as your compensation is concerned. I would have that before you submit your offer. You need to have compensation form, um, compensation agreement between brokers. You need to verify. Let's talk about the compensation again. Number one, when you pull up the listings, it is your fiduciary duty because this isn't just a buyer or a consumer. You've taken them on as a client. They have instructed you to not expose them to any property because of their situation, where they might tell you they do not want to pay for even a part of your compensation. So what ends up happening is that you're needing to verify that, hey, it is my fiduciary duty to have a client relationship with my buyer. And I'm not trying to create a hardship situation for them or expose them to houses that they can't buy. So what ends up happening is that I'm needing to verify the compensation before I market your property. What is the compensation? Because I'm not seeing it on your website to determine if it meets my client's criteria. Okay. So what ends up happening is that the agent doesn't want to tell you what the compensation is. It's no, he doesn't want to send you a text. He doesn't want to send you an email. He doesn't want to pick up the phone. It's not on the broker's website. Make that appointment. Make that appointment. Make it in the middle of the day. That way the seller can clean her house and mop floors and do a load of laundry, and do everything they need to do, and then cancel the appointment because they chose not to return the phone call. At that moment, I can guarantee you on a Saturday, Sunday, or after hours, they were about to have dinner and now they have to clean the house and go eat at Pizza Hut or something. And they're out of their house 2 hours in 100-degree weather when they could have been in the comfort of their own home. And because the agent was greedy and is in total 100% non-compliance to this lawsuit and its requirements of full transparency and disclosure, all of a sudden, what do you mean? You didn't disclose that we're offering compensation? I'm needing to take that promotion. My kid needs to start in the other side of town. That's going to be, I have to fight traffic through I-10 and 281 to get my kid to the school because you're not telling them what we're paying. You're not, I'm going to fire you. I'm going to go with another agent. I need my household. Hey, you're in violation. Who do I need to call? Because it sounds like you're being greedy and you're not protecting my interests, Mr. Listing Agent. Didn't you guys just get sued because you guys weren't something about the compensation? They're going to research it, guys. Full disclosure on the listing side, full disclosure on the buying side. The compensation is not for the listing agent to keep because they're being greedy. Okay. At the same time, you control the buyer. You get paid for one reason and one reason only, guys. I don't care how crappy on our listings, guys. And I tell them that's one of the things that I'm teaching on our listings. I'm making people realize that the buyer's agent gets paid for one thing and one thing only, to deliver to you, the listing agent, a cash buyer or a highly qualified buyer. That is it. If you have to even write up a contract for the buyer's agent because they're a new agent, don't be a bully, be a buddy. Your house has been sitting for 60 or 90 days. Write up the contract for them or help them through it because who's going to benefit is you. Because if that someone needs to buy another house, you could lose two sales rather than one. So don't be greedy. Help other people, but at the same time, know your worth, guys. Because there's a lot of other brokers saying, no, just well, it means maybe they might pay you, maybe nothing. It's 100-degree weather outside. I don't get out of my office for lunch. And here you expect a lady to get all dressed up in her makeup with 4-inch pumps to go show $1 million home or a $500,000 home, and then at the end be told, "Sorry, we're not going to pay you." Really? Who does that? Don't do it. Don't do it to yourself, guys. Don't deliver your highly qualified candidate to a builder without verifying compensation and expose them to other options. Let them know that there's builders and then there's builders. Quality of construction. Forecast the fact that, hey, in 5 years, this builder is you're going to be in direct competition with them. If we go to this other builder, the community looks better. The HOA looks better. There's less renters. Some of these startup communities, guys, they starting to look real bad. They're gonna hate you. Might get paid your 1, 2, and 3 with those low budget builders, but in 3, 5, and 7 years, when they're in direct competition with that builder, they're gonna hate you. Okay. So once again, be strategic. That's the new home market. Same thing with the existing market. Do not expose, they don't have the privilege to talk to your client. It is a privilege to have somebody under buyer's representation. Only you know your client's needs. You're giving advice and opinion. Mr. Buyer, I can't expose you to this property. It doesn't meet the criteria that we outlined at the beginning. There's other options for you that I can market for you. I've already made those appointments. Unfortunately, that's not an option. I don't know what's going on with it. They might be on the verge of it. The agent has been non-responsive. Therefore, I don't want to expose you to a property and you fall in love with it, and then all of a sudden you not be able to buy it. So why don't I just expose you to some other options that do meet that criteria? Okay. There's a workaround, guys. Don't give away the gold. Okay. So that's pretty much it. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed my presentation.